Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
The race to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader and as Prime Minister has passed a pair of key deadlines. Late last week was the cutoff for people to enter as candidates, while yesterday was the last chance for people to register as Liberals in order to cast a ballot in this campaign. But the Liberal Party is now facing challenges on both fronts. For one, the ballot will be looking a bit smaller than expected. The party has informed Ottawa MP Chandra Arya, the first sitting MP to declare their intention to run, that he is not allowed to become a candidate, even though he says he had the money and signatures to enter. The specific reasons for barring him from the race have not yet been made public by the party. He was one of 7 hopefuls in this campaign. There are also concerns that some non-Liberals may be trying to join the party to sway the outcome. I'm Cormac McSweeney, and today on The Big Story, I'm examining both those issues with Greg McEachern with Can Strategies, a former advisor to the Liberals, and we'll be talking as well about the Trump effect on the race and the possibility the new leader may launch a quick election. Greg, thanks very much for joining me.
My pleasure, Cormac.
So what's behind this Arya ouster?
I don't know, and it would be purely speculation on my part. And I've not actually reached out to anyone to find out anything. But I will say this, as a Liberal, I was a bit alarmed when he did an interview with CBC's David Cochrane, where he really downplayed the importance of French language in Canada and its importance to the Liberal Party. We are the party of bilingualism. I think a lot of people were not happy with that. I've seen some things that are, through social media that are speculation. But until either the party or the member of parliament wants to come forward and say those reasons, I'll leave it there. But realistically, I do not think that this candidate had a big chance, of actually, succeeding. I think, with any leadership, you have to be careful where the intention of a candidate is to seek attention. This is a short leadership. This is not like 2006 and for the Liberals, which I think they can look back and learn a lot from. I remember at one point there were 14 interested candidates the summer previous to the December vote. So I don't have any evidence or anything that would be other than speculation.
But the party is citing a specific rule on this that allows them to get rid of a candidate due to public statements, past improper conduct, a lack of commitment to democracy, or other reputational or legal jeopardies. Is that an indication of what might be behind this?
Yeah. Looking at those, when I looked at those points, I thought that at least 2 of them you might be able to apply his public statements against bilingualism, especially in terms of the history of the Liberal Party. And let's be honest, in terms of political survival, the Liberal Party needs as much support in Quebec as it can get. But again, anything else there would be speculation. I am aware, I've seen reports that this MP did meet with Prime Minister Modi. For me, as a Canadian, and given what has been reported about India's actions in Canada, I would find that concerning.
And I believe that meeting between Arya and Prime Minister Modi took place last summer, well after the allegations from Canadian officials that the Indian government is linked to interference, murder, and violence in Canada. It's something India denies. But there's been no evidence that Arya is linked to those activities. So would that then fall under the reputational jeopardy aspect?
Yeah, going back even before that, you can go back to the fall of 2023, where when the story actually broke, you had, some concerning comments by politicians in Canada that decided to side with India before getting all the facts. But even going back to the Obama administration, Modi was denied a visa based on his time as a governor. So it is concerning for me, again, not just as a Liberal, but as a Canadian, that someone would seek out a meeting with someone who does not seem to have the best interests of Canada or treats our sovereignty as the leader of another country should.
Do you think there's a chance Mr. Arya could legally challenge this decision, or is this a situation where in Canada political parties kind of have the right to make their own rules as to who can join and run?
So I'm not a lawyer, and nor do I play one on a podcast, but I do pay attention to political reporting, especially close. And I know that, could something legally be started based on history, on parties of all stripes? I would say yes. Whether it actually comes to a successful conclusion, that I don't see as many precedents for.
Mr. Arya as well, questioning the legitimacy of the next leader because of this choice by the party to deny him a chance to run. Do you think that this will tarnish the reputation of whoever ends up winning the job?
No.
Why not?
I think if you ask a lot of people even in the Ottawa press gallery or in our little Ottawa bubble here, if they knew who this MP was, he's been an MP since 2015. I mean, I'm not trying to be unkind here, but the reality is a lot of people were not aware of this individual. So if you are truly, a partisan Liberal supporter, and if you are truly concerned about the leader of the opposition, you are focused on getting a good leader for the party right now and on the next election. And I think that's where a lot of Liberals are focused on right now. And again, if this is about getting attention, this is probably not the right way to go about it if you want to have a long future in Canadian politics. It raises a lot of questions, and that that's not what you want to be known for.
How is it that the party can decide that he is not qualified to become leader of the party, but he's still qualified to run for the party as an MP?
Well, I think those are two different things, and it'll be interesting to see if the information and related to the decision was something based on recent factors. He's ran several times, but of course, in anything, in any media coverage, I've seen this. When we may have questioned the level of scrutiny about the leader of the opposition by media, say in 2023, the answer I would have got was, well, he's not the prime minister. So I think you do have to kind of look at how close is this person actually potentially to the levers of power. And, in reporting done by your organization, other organizations, basically we see, unfortunately or fortunately, the reality is there are three main names that are being talked about.
So let's talk about another issue around this race that has become an issue recently, and that is memberships. There are some people who are not considered Liberal voices, like Tamara Leach of the Convoy protest, or former Chief of Defense Staff General Rick Hillier, who has been quite critical of the Liberals, who are urging people to sign up and register as Liberals to back a candidate or sway the vote in some way. How does the party prevent outside groups from having an influence on the outcome?
Well, in terms of Ms. Leach, I'm speaking to you from an office that I pay rent on, but I couldn't access during the convoy. So I really don't have a lot of interest, and I have a bias, obviously, against anything that a convoy organizer would say. But I think it's kind of not maybe all that surprising that she would recommend some sort of political interference. I do think it does cast a bit of a pall on General Hillier's contributions, and raises a lot of questions about why someone with his level of experience feels he needs to put out something on social media calling for disruption of another party's leadership race. I've been a partisan, my entire voting life. I realize that my party doesn't always get to be in government, but there's a level of partisanship that I think some of us would not cross. For me, that is not something I would want to say about one of the parties that I don't support. So I found that visit very disappointing about General Hillier. The party has had conversations, vigorous conversations, I'm told, with party officials, past party officials, members of caucus, It's really up to them to make sure that this is as strong as it can be, and being mindful of a time where foreign interference is a topic that is front and center, and you can't criticize your opponent's approach on foreign interference. For example, the fact that the Conservative leader doesn't have a security clearance, and yet have your ship not batten down, for example. So I think the onus is really on the Liberals to make sure of that. But it is disappointing to see some of the voices. I guess everybody is a bit fixated on the Liberal leadership. It does consume a lot of the political media oxygen. But I would caution people. If this was my party doing this, I would say, how much do we want to aid the Liberals, our opponents, in getting attention for this? Why are we delivering this to them? I'm not sure it's the wisest move, but it may be reflective that the Liberal leadership, the departure of Justin Trudeau, the comments about the future of carbon pricing, maybe it has rattled some people on the Conservative side.
How confident are you that the decision in the end will not be influenced by groups trying to sway what happens?
I think they do what they've done thus far, is to make sure that they're listening to people that might see something that you're not. You avoid groupthink. You make sure that somebody else is seeing, what potentially somebody who has nefarious purposes might be able to do with it. So they did, if you look at what the rules might have been presented or were suspected to be early on, some of the changes were more vigorous. The other thing is that there's a check and balance in that this is a competitive process. So you've got several camps. I mentioned that, there's the top three as, kind of perceived by media coverage. There's also other ones. Those people, just like during an election, there's a reason why at every election station, all the parties can have, observers. There's a process with that as well. You have to make sure that the rules that you're doing are as strong as possible, and they're not going to benefit, one camp or another. I think they're striving towards that. There's no way it's going to be perfect. There's things that are happening now in Canada that we would not have imagined in 2013. But this is why you need to make sure that you're listening to caucus, you're listening to past party officials, you're listening to people who understand foreign interference and where things might be weak, where they are strong. Those things are all really important. It is, Cormac, I will say it's a bit of a learning experience because of the fact that foreign interference in leadership, and we've heard some reports that this happened during the Conservative ones. That's a big change. We need to learn from what happened in the Conservative one and ensure it doesn't happen in ours. But I'm sure there's going to be things in this race that whoever does a leadership race next will be learning from. There's a concept in politics, that generals are always fighting the last battle, but these are things where you don't have a leadership every year. Maybe every 2 years if you're the Conservatives. Sorry, I had to get that in there. But you've got to learn from each one.
More on the big story with Greg McEachran of Can Strategies, speaking about the Liberal leadership race in just a moment. Now, Greg, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about endorsements because it appears that one candidate has more endorsements than others. Of course, in any leadership race, you have sitting MPs and ministers who decide to back one candidate over the others. In this race, it appears so far that Mark Carney has more endorsements from those in caucus than even his closest rival, former finance minister Chrystia Freeland. But it's not caucus that votes for the leader, it's the membership. So does this really matter, or is it a sign that one candidate may be pulling ahead?
So, quite often I could argue that caucus endorsements do not actually tip the scale. But in a short leadership like this, it does. And also, you're also fighting every day for who's going to get the media message. And, there was one day about a week ago where the Carney folks rolled out 4 different endorsements in the run of a day. And as the day went on, the political coverage reflected that. That was probably a smart move when you've got such a short leadership.
Yeah, and Freeland had, I think, more than 20 MPs and ministers already expressing their support when she launched her campaign. With Carney, it's been a different approach where it's been a trickle. Every day there's a new minister or new figure who's tossing their name behind Carney. Two different media strategies there, obviously.
And on that, I think the rollout for Mark Carney, and again, I just stress for those listening that I'm neutral in the leadership, but part of it I think is reflective of people that had not made up their mind. The thing that I keep hearing about is Mark Carney's appearance on the Daily Show was a bit of a game changer for a lot of MPs. Some of them had saw him in British Columbia at the caucus retreat and thought, he's smart. I'm not sure he blew the roof off, but the Daily Show is one of those places where you are, on a trapeze without a net. It's a really, really tough, it's a tough medium. And I think from there, what you might be saying with the endorsements is that people that actually had not made up their mind, whereas for Chrystia Freeland, some of these relationships may go back, years even.
So, on the issues of this campaign, I mean, every leadership race focuses on a variety of policies, but is this one basically about the US and President Trump? Not only will members have to decide who is the best leader and new prime minister to go toe to toe with Trump, but also who may be best situated to take on conservative leader Pierre Poilievre in a general election that may largely be focused on President Trump.
Yeah, if this was 2024, this was going to be an election about Justin Trudeau and the carbon tax. And now it's 2025. I think it's about Trump, but it's also about the economy. Those tariffs could have just a incredible impact on our economy. If it's the percentage points that seems to be continuously mused about by President Trump, economists predict that we would be in a recession. So it's about preserving that. I mean, Canadians worked really hard to get through the pandemic. They had to face a massive affordability issues, likes that we haven't seen for a couple of generations. A lot of the gains on that have been hard won. Canadians worked really hard and have suffered a lot financially. And now we have inflation rates coming back down. We see job numbers are strong. We want to keep maintaining that and having somebody that can speak to the president and know what they're talking about. I mean, what's tough for conservatives is they cannot point to their success around how they handled the 2008 downturn in the economy because Mark Carney was governor of the Bank of Canada then. So you can't take just half the credit for that. The guy has some credibility on that, and that's the messaging you also see from his supporters. You also see Chrystia Freeland talking about in interviews about the reason why Trump doesn't like her is because she was a tough negotiator. So in those, what we consider to be, and right now the top two candidates, it definitely is about that. And it is amazing how quickly the three-word slogan has kind of gone out the window in light of some really scary economic times.
And then finally, I want to look ahead because there's a report from the Hill Times that a lot of Liberals internally are pushing for the next leader, whoever that may be, to call an election after they're in place, but before the House of Commons returns from prorogation on March 24th. There's a couple of weeks of a window there where they could do that. Is that a possibility in your eyes? And what are the pros and cons to that?
So because I'm very, 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 very old, I'm going to share this back. Some of people might not be familiar with it, but when a government loses a confidence motion, there's a tradition where all the paper in the old days, all the paper was no longer of any use because the parliament had ended and they throw it up in the air. So you've got that visual. And what does that visual mean? You have lost a confidence vote. So one of the pros of going to an election earlier would be that you are in control of your own destiny. You have decided that we're going to do that. There is a con in that you are missing a big opportunity with the speech from the throne to have a moment where you get to deliver your vision and your outlook for the, for what you see as your time as prime minister. You can sell that to Canadians. And we know that the opposition parties have indicated that at the first chance, according to them, that they would, vote non-confidence in the government. The other issue, Cormac, that people need to be very aware of is that it takes money to fund the programs and services that Canadians like and enjoy and want. And at a certain point, the government has to address that through something called estimates. And those votes are very important. At a certain point, the government will run out of money to spend if it doesn't return and address that.
Thanks so much, Greg. Really appreciate your thoughts on all of this.
Thanks, Cormac.
That was Greg McEachran with Can Strategies, a former advisor to the Liberals, talking with me about the decision from the Liberal Party to kick Ottawa MP Chandra Arya out of the leadership race, as well as membership issues and the Trump effect on the campaign. I'm Cormac McSweeney, and that was The Big Story. You can send us your feedback on this episode or any other episode by emailing us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or leave a voicemail at 416-935-5935. You can find us on the Seeker app or on all your favorite podcast players. Please rate, review, follow, and share. Thanks for listening.